Wake up call.
This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and just thanks to the committee members. I know this is a discussion that we've been trying to have since last week, and I want to thank Mr. Genuis for tabling the original motion to allow us to begin this important discussion. It's no secret that what we're seeing and what's happening with the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation, given that it's a foundation that is supported by public funds, that it's important that, given what the events have transpired with the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation, that it is in the public interest to see an investigation into the finances, the donations, and in particular, any possible misdealings that the organization may have. It's important, I think, that the Canada Revenue Agency do this work because they're, of course, an agency that has, one, the capacity, tools, but also a mandate to review aspects of this work that maybe this committee in some aspects wouldn't be able to. But I do believe that given the amendment that was just noted by my colleague from the Bloc Québécois, that it is important to make more narrow the role of the CRA in this work, and I accept the amendments given the letter from the leader of the Bloc Québécois.
Thank you. Before I make my comments, just a question of clarification for the clerk. The motion that is on the floor is the motion that was put on notice on April 18th in its entirety. Is that correct? Okay. And the amendment is to remove the phrase the Auditor General and. So it would just be the committee. Canada and, yes. Yeah, okay, excellent. So Conservatives are supportive of the amendment and the amended motion. I do want to underline our view that public hearings at committee are critical on this issue. It doesn't have to be as many hearings as we had originally proposed last week. We're open to reasonable compromises given the other various issues that the committee could be looking at. So we feel it is reasonable to ask the Canada Revenue Agency to undertake this investigation, although they will ultimately make that decision independently. We can't know for sure how they will respond to this request, but it's reasonable for us to make this request. And in the meantime, I think the role we have as parliamentarians for getting to the bottom of these kinds of issues should very much include a certain number of public hearings as well. So I do want to signal that that while we want to be collaborative and we support this motion, we will be moving another motion that we think gets to the heart of the issue, which is the need to have public hearings here in Parliament involving members of Parliament doing our job to get to the bottom of it, that we need to have those hearings as well. Thanks.
Mr. Fragascatos.
Our side supports what Mr. Desjardins has put forward with the amendment from the Bloc. And I thank them both for being collaborative here.
Do I have approval then for the amendment from Madame Claudine Gagné? Just ayes all around. I'm seeing head nods. Yes, I'm seeing ayes. I'm going to call that passed. And then I'm going to ask for a recorded vote for the motion as amendment, which I will read, that the committee calls on the Canada Revenue Agency to investigate the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation, that the committee believes it is in the public interest to prioritize this investigation.
Put the question, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Garnett.
In favor.
Mr. Cram.
In favor.
Mr. Macaulay.
Yes.
Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés.
Oui.
Monsieur Desjardins.
Yes.
Miss Bradford.
In favor.
Mr. Fragascatos.
Yes.
Miss Shanahan.
Yes.
Monsieur Drouin.
Oui.
Miss Yip.
Yes.
Ten yeas pour, nays contre, zéro.
Très bien. Thank you very much. I will send a note as the committee chair to the CRA informing them of this motion that was passed unanimously. Mr. Genuis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Now, as foreshadowed, I would now like to move another motion that, given that the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation received a $125 million taxpayer-funded payment in 2002, the committee hold 3 hearings into the situation at the Trudeau Foundation and report its findings to the House. So colleagues, will recall last Monday I spoke a little bit about the importance of this investigation to the Trudeau Foundation. At the time, we presented a detailed motion that included specific suggested witness names and that called for a somewhat broader study than the one that we're proposing today. And debate was adjourned on that motion. I'm hopeful that this motion will find the favor of the committee, recognizing that there are competing priorities that different members have. I think 3 meetings provides us with a good opportunity to look at this issue while at the same time leaving space for other things, and we'll start the work of identifying what we can identify in the context of those public hearings. The background of this story, I think members and the public know generally, which is that as soon as Prime Minister Trudeau took office, the foundation that bears his name started receiving substantial amounts of new money in foreign donations. The foundation said they returned certain monies, and that turned out not to be true. They said they had returned certain monies, and that turned out not to be true. Subsequently, this provoked a kind of governance crisis in the board and mass resignation.
Chair, I never doubt, of course, the sincerity of my colleague, but as someone who I think follows regularly the work of parliamentarians in committees, he will know that at ethics there was a motion passed to bring to light, to bring to the fore, rather, what he's calling for. I think that we have a lot of work to do on this committee, work that we had already committed to, and the motion that we voted on at the outset of this meeting still allows us to live up to our responsibilities as parliamentarians by asking the Canada Revenue Agency to examine issues relating to the foundation.
With the letter received from the Auditor General, who presented very reasonable justification why she cannot get into the details beyond her mandate with the events that occurred with the Pierre-Elliott Trudeau Foundation, even if another committee is to be examining this issue, I think an extra set of eyes or several other sets of eyes would be useful and important. I'd also stress that if the motion we have just adopted, requesting CRA to conduct an audit, occurs in proper and due form, it'll still take a couple of months. And the public deserves to know more about the situation and the issues, and the public should have access to this detailed information that will be laid out before the committee in order to see what really occurred during or with the foundation, whether there were reimbursements or not, etc.
It is always inspiring to see the gymnastics that my colleagues across the way engage in to try to avoid accountability. I'm sure none of them are being intentionally misleading, but they may have received some faulty information. The Ethics Committee is not undertaking anything like a standalone study on what happened to the Trudeau Foundation. They are merely including from what I understand, 2 witnesses from the Trudeau Foundation to comment on their broader look at election interference. That is very different from what I think is required here, which is an investigation of what happened to the Trudeau Foundation. And no parliamentary committees do conduct investigations. They seek to answer important questions about public expenditure, the activities and responsibilities of government institutions, and if we're going to see another hour and a half gymnastics show from the government side, so be it. But I'm very proud to be supporting this motion, and I think it's appropriate. It fits squarely within the mandate of this committee and the work that is required to get to the bottom of what happened at the Trudeau Foundation.
We just passed a motion that I think is a good one that calls on the CRA to conduct an investigation. However, I do take the point that the Bloc Québécois is making with regards to the lengthy amount of time that report would take, of course. And so I'm more partial to an independent investigation by the CRA for this kind of work because it's dealing with, in particular, very detailed financial statements, I'm sure. And so I prefer the CRA to investigate that, and I'm sure all of you have agreed to that. However, the work that we would be conducting in these meetings would be, if I can understand more correctly, Mr. Genuis, is that it would be to see how these members, or at least the members that they agree to come here, would have some kind of knowledge of these donations in particular. Would that be the nature of the questions you think that we'd be asking? Or to be more in relation to how they operate, similar to ethics? Or like what would kind of be our objective here? Would it be to narrowly look at the 125 million taxpayer funded payments? Or could we, you think, make that broader in some aspect, or just some clarity as to what we would be doing in this particular setting versus what the CRA would be doing?
Yeah, I'm happy to address that question. The motion was intentionally written in a way that gives members broad latitude to ask the questions that are on their mind. I think I think that's suggested by the reference to the $125 million payment. It's a given that it's context. But the substantive part of the motion is that the committee hold 3 hearings into the situation at the Trudeau Foundation and report its findings to the House.
I'm not sure if the member would be open to amending the total amount of meetings that you think this could potentially have, to potentially 2 maybe, or 1 or 2, just to make it a little more lean for us, just because we don't have that much time before the summer.
Yeah, so I'm happy to reason together, to quote The Godfather. But three is already fewer hearings than I wanted. I mean, I could live with 2. I think 1 would be too few. What's so funny, guys? Okay. 4.5 hours. My initial motion had, I think, all of the witnesses we needed to hear from, which would have been substantially longer. And I feel like I've already come with a compromise, and you're asking me to meet halfway again when I've already gone 2/3 of the way. But anyways, Mr. Desjardins, basically the way the votes will work on this committee, it comes down to you. I would strongly object to less than 2 hearings. And I think maybe if we define it by number of hours instead of number of meetings, we give ourselves and the chair more flexibility. I won't propose an amendment. I'll leave it to you to propose an amendment, Mr. Desjardins. But in general terms, that would be the way I would see this.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks to my opposition colleagues for, I think, striking a good balance for the work that I'm interested in doing, and the other work, and first, of course, in trying to make sure that First Nations people are best represented. And so I think striking a balance at 2 meetings is reasonable. I know, Kelly, you mentioned 1 meeting, but if we're all amicable to 2, I'd prefer 1 or 2 on this. I for sure want to have it happen, considering the comments made by Mr. Genuis on this. I'm in favor of voting for this. And so if we can maybe hear some comments from maybe the government members, the Liberal members, if they'd be amicable to 2 meetings, I think it's reasonable considering that he did start at 5, and I think 2 is fine.
I understand that based on conversations that we've had across the aisle, that there is agreement, Mr. Chair, on 2 meetings. Elected officials would not be invited. Family members would not be invited. And in order to ensure that we are doing what we need to do at public accounts and focusing on the issues tasked of us, we're not going to get into an extended discussion on witnesses at this meeting. That can be taken up at the subcommittee level. I'm looking at my colleagues, but I see nodding.
Okay, and on your second point, what witnesses, I completely agree with you on that. As for the first 2, I'm going to let the members speak to that, but Mr. Genuis, do you have comments? I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, so Chair, I think again in the spirit of compromise, and from my firm conviction that these committee hearings need to happen, we are going to do 2 committee hearings regarding the Trudeau Foundation, and at those two meetings, we will not be inviting elected officials or members of the Trudeau family. My personal view is that there are some questions that need to be answered by those folks, but I also understand just the reality of the fact that we've got to come to an understanding here in order to allow these hearings to proceed.
That the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation received a $125 million taxpayer-funded payment in 2002. The committee hold 2 hearings into the situation at the Trudeau Foundation and report its findings to the House. Witnesses will not include any elected members or Trudeau family members. And I'm going to call a recorded vote on this, even though I think there's agreement. Clerk, if you could call that roll call, please.
Mr. Jennis.
Yes.
Mr. Cram.
In favor?
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Madame Sinclair de Gagné.
Oui.
Mr. Desjarlais.
Yes.
Miss Bradford.
Yes.
Mr. Fragiskatos.
Yes.
Miss Shanahan.
Oui.
Monsieur Drouin.
Oui.
Miss Yip.
Yes.
10 yeas, contre, nays, 0.